Chag Sameach, everyone. Shana Tova. I didn't grow up observant. My Judaism was a gift that was waiting for me much later in my life. And so unlike many of you, not all of you, I know I'm not alone here, but unlike many of you, I can remember the first time that I went to shul for Rosh Hashanah. It looked very different than this. A tiny synagogue in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, completely lay-led, no chazan, no rabbi, just some Great Plains Jews coming together to celebrate a new year. But even without all of those elements that we are so blessed to have here at Shaarey Zedek, those first high holidays at Mount Zion Temple forever etched themselves into my memory and into my heart. And there are a lot of reasons for that. It was a learning experience. I was completely lost in the service. Completely lost. And quickly had to learn how to follow along. It was a belonging experience. I met new friends, people that would become like family to me. But most palpably, it was a God experience. One that I didn't know was possible. And it came to me at a very specific moment, one that I wasn't really expecting. It was when I heard for the very first time the sound of the shofar. Until that point, those special sacred moments almost always involved ritual. Lighting Shabbat candles, blessing the community before Kiddush on Friday nights, holding hands and singing Debbie Friedman's Havdalah blessings with that twisted candle held high. But nothing could prepare me for the shofar. And to this day, I can't hear those notes without the hairs on my arms standing up, without getting some tears in my eyes. This seemingly simple instrument is anything but. There's something magic about this. And I know that all of us understand that in some way, whether we've experienced this call for the first time this year, or if we've been listening to it for as long as we can remember. There's something special here, which, by the way, is deeply embedded within our text and our tradition. Do you know how many times the term Rosh Hashanah is mentioned in the Torah? 0. None. In the Torah, this beautiful and awesome day is referred to as Yom Teruah, the day of calling, or more intentionally, the day of the shofar blasts. Our ancestors, our great rabbis, knew this and wrestled with how to best understand marking a new year and everything that means for us as a people and as a community, while simultaneously diving deep into the spiritual and mystical significance of shofar. And what they ultimately argued for is this: that the central mitzvah, the central commandment of Yom Teruah, of Rosh Hashanah, is much more complicated and important than we might realize. That our main requirement today, that our job, our obligation today and throughout these days of awe, is not to hear the shofar, but to listen to the shofar. That might seem like a simple distinction, but it is anything but. Because as our rabbis, as well as some of the greatest thinkers and scientists of modernity have shown, there is a profound difference between those two words. Hearing is physiological. Vibrations created by different noises fill our ears and alert us to the sounds around us. But listening is a psychological art. It requires training, patience, and thoughtfulness. To listen, to take the sounds and to organize them, to break them into words, into messages, into emotions. Listening is the cosmic act of being in dialogue, of being connected to something bigger than ourselves. While hearing is one-sided, self-focused, listening, by definition, links us to the one who is speaking. And this is what the rabbis argue is the ikar, is the essence of this magical day. That when we show up on the day of Truah, we are commanded to listen to what the shofar is telling us. And this is why this is so important, because the shofar does speak. It has its own language. It has a message that it is desperately trying to convey. The shofar speaks through 4 different calls, all of which have their own stand-alone significance. But together, the true message of this day is presented in the most profound of ways. The first call, Tekiyah, is the original call. The call that Maimonides poetically described as a wake-up call. A wake-up call to our neshamas, to our souls. He wrote that this blast is saying, "Awake, awake, you sleepers from your slumber." It sounds like this. Now, while Maimonides' drash on this is beautiful and poetic, I think we can break it down into even simpler terms. To me, the best translation of Tekiyah is your name with an exclamation mark behind it. It's like when you're kind of zoning out in class or in a meeting or at dinner, and someone who is speaking sees that you're not fully present and says, "Steve!" Sorry, Steve. Pay attention. That is Tekiyah. Get back with us. Pay attention, because something important is about to happen. The second message of the shofar is shvarim, which in the Hebrew means broken. Broken. And you can hear the breaking in the call. It sounds like this. Shvarim, Rav Kook argued, is a moan of regret or remorse. It is the groan of the things that we have left broken or untended. It is a reminder that the world before us lies shattered and desperately needs to be put back together. It is a cry of disbelief that in a society filled with incredible minds and plentiful resources, that we still have people in our community going hungry and sleeping on the streets. Disbelief that our systems of justice too often operate on an imbalanced scale influenced by wealth, social standing, and power. Disbelief that we can put a robot on Mars, but for the life of us, we can't seem to keep our children safe in their schools. Shvarim is heavy, and intentionally so. It forces us to see the cracks, the fissures, and it also forces us to ask ourselves what role we've played in creating, maintaining, or ignoring those cracks. And so we can translate these haunting breaking notes into this phrase: the world lies broken before you. So here's our message. David, pay attention. The world lies broken before you. Truah, the third call, and the call for which this awesome and holy day is named. Yom Truah. The great Spanish rabbi known as the Akedat Yitzchak wrote that this sound is meant to convey sorrow and anxiety. Unlike Shvarim, which speaks to systems and ideas, Truah is meant to express the individual, the personal, the intimate cry of despair and urgency. We are to listen to these notes as if we were listening to a human being weeping, crying out to be seen and heard. It sounds like this. This is the call that's supposed to hit us in our gut, that's supposed to knock the wind out of us. This is the call where if we're listening, if we're really listening, it's impossible not to feel something deep within our bones. Impossible not to have our hearts ache with a sense of accountability and connectedness. It is Truah that shouts into our souls that all of us are family, that we are brothers and sisters, that our stories and our fates are weaved together in a beautiful tapestry of humanity. When we hurt someone we love, whether intentionally or unintentionally, their broken heart is the sound of Truah. When we experience the horrific realities of war, it is the tears of loss and grief, the wails of the innocent caught in unimaginable fear, violence, and suffering that call out with Truah. When we are torn apart from one another, whether physically, like our brothers and sisters held captive this Rosh Hashanah in the tunnels of Gaza, may God bring them home. Or torn from one another politically, ideologically, or emotionally, it is the great chasm of distance, the valley of alienation and isolation that reverberates with the echoing pleas of Truah. This is how Truah is translated. Your brothers and sisters are weeping. 3 notes in. Here is where we are. Sharon, pay attention. The world lies broken before you. Your brothers and sisters are weeping. 3 notes in. But this is not where we end. Because if we stopped here, then this day wouldn't make any sense at all. This isn't Tisha B'Av. We don't spend the day rending our clothing, sitting on the floor, and lamenting. This is Rosh Hashanah, Yom Truah, a Yom Tov, a Yontif, a day of singing, of celebrating, a day we fill with family and friends, with food and wine, with simcha and bracha, to out hayom harat olam. Today a new world is created, a new age is dawning, a new us is emerging to take all of the meshugas that surrounds us and to stand in united and unwavering defiance that from this moment on we will be defined by the work of our hands and by the attention of our hearts because we are listening. We are listening as that final call enters our ears, but travels immediately to our minds, to our hearts, and makes its way to somewhere beyond. Tekiah Gedolah, the blast that reaches out and shakes us and says in a way that is so quintessentially Jewish, Nu, what are you waiting for? And this one, I'm not going to blow. I'm going to leave that one to Harry, who will take it over in just a minute because we need a pro for that one. Tekiah Gedolah is the sound that puts the entire message together. This is what we're here for. Because on any given day, we can come together for a spiritual assessment. Any given day, we can reflect on the things that are broken, on the work that needs to be done. But it is during these days of awe when we respond individually and collectively, not with surus and angst, not with hesitancy and fear, but with an emphatic declaration of hope and conviction, of promise, of confidence, of love. And that is the beautiful paradox. Because how does the message of Shofar end? It ends with us beginning. Beginning with an understanding, first and foremost, that we can't do it all. And we aren't expected to. We can't single-handedly put a broken world back together. We can't alone feed all those who are hungry or wipe the tears of everyone who is in pain or loss or grief or despair. But we can't make a difference. We must make a difference. The day is short, the work is excessive, the voice of the shofar is urgent, but mitzvah by mitzvah, one act of kindness by one act of kindness, one moment of empathy and understanding by one moment of empathy and understanding, we build towards something incredible. We build towards change. The shofar is speaking to us. We hear it. But right now we must listen to it. And we must respond. Congregation Shaarey Zedek, pay attention. The world lies shattered before you. Your brothers and sisters are weeping. No. What are you waiting for?